I knew something was wrong the moment I saw her name light up my phone. My daughter never called without a reason, and the tone in her first breath told me the reason wouldn't be good. She didn't waste time on greetings. She just said, "Dad, don't come to my graduation. It's better if you stay home." Her voice was flat, almost rehearsed, like someone had coached her through the line. For a moment, I couldn't answer. I felt the air leave my chest, as if someone had pushed the life out of me. I asked her why, though part of me already feared the truth. She said she wanted the day to be about her journey, about her success, and that my presence would complicate things. I stood in my small living room, phone trembling in my hand, wondering how a father could complicate his child's celebration. I tried to speak again, but she cut me off. She said she didn't want any awkwardness in front of her friends, especially her boyfriend's family. She talked as if I were a stranger who might embarrass her, not the man who stayed up at night figuring out how to pay another semester's bill. When she ended the call, there was no pause for kindness, no second thought, just a quick goodbye, like she was removing a burden from her schedule. I stood there listening to the silence, trying to make sense of a daughter who no longer wanted me in the same room on the biggest day of her life. The first wave was confusion. I checked the message thread, wondering if I had missed something or said something wrong. But the next wave hit harder, humiliation. It spread through me like heat, and I felt it settle deep inside. I kept thinking, how did we get here? She spoke as if someone else had carried her through college, as if she alone had carved her path. I realized she believed every bit of it. She thought she had done it all without help. Or maybe she thought her boyfriend's family had done more than they actually had. I wanted to remind her of every payment I made, every hour I picked up at the warehouse, every old tool I sold when the bills got tight. But I swallowed it, because saying it then would have sounded like begging to be included. I stayed quiet because I still hoped she might remember on her own. Maybe she would look at the numbers again and see the truth. Maybe she'd see who really stood behind her. But deep down, I knew her circles were different now. Her boyfriend liked to show off, liked to talk about self-made success. I could hear his influence in her tone, sharp and dismissive. Someone had filled her head with pride so heavy, it pushed me out. As I stood there holding the phone, I realized her graduation was never meant to include me. And I need to ask you, if your own child said you weren't welcome on the day you sacrificed everything for, would you still show up? When she told me not to come, the pain didn't come from that one moment alone. It came from everything behind it. Years of choices she never saw, hours of work she never knew about, and the quiet sacrifices I made so she could stand on a stage she now thought she reached alone. I didn't support her education to earn praise or repayment. I did it because that's what a father does when he wants his child to have a life better than his own. Still, remembering those long nights made her words cut deeper than I expected. I started paying for her college the same way I paid for everything in my life, one small step at a time. When tuition went up, I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse. I'd get home long after midnight, my back stiff and my hands aching, but I kept going because missing a payment would mean she'd lose her spot. I never told her about the loan I took out the winter she needed a new computer. I didn't want her to worry. And when things got tight, I sold a few old tools from the garage, good ones I'd carried for years. Letting them go hurt, but it was nothing compared to the idea of letting her fall behind in school. She was different back then. She used to thank me for little things, like rides to her part-time job or a warm meal after a long shift. Her smile felt honest, and I believed she saw me as her steady ground. But something changed around her second year of college. She started talking about moving up and not wanting to look like she came from nothing. I didn't realize it then, but certain people around her pushed that idea harder than I expected. Her boyfriend was one of them, always talking about image, status, and the importance of appearing successful. She picked up those words the way young people pick up clothes from a store shelf, thinking they define who they are. I didn't tell her I was paying because I wanted her to feel she had earned her own path. I wanted her to grow without feeling tied to my struggles. When she said she wanted independence, I thought keeping quiet would help her stand tall. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe not telling her made it too easy for someone else to step in and take credit. Still, I stayed silent because I believed she would see the truth someday, not through paperwork, but through the bond between us. But as she drifted away, as her calls grew shorter and her tone colder, I felt a tension building inside me. Something wasn't right. There was more going on than her growing up or wanting space. Someone had turned her pride into a shield, and behind it, she began to rewrite her own story, one where I played no part at all. Now I ask you, honestly, should parents reveal everything they sacrifice, or stay silent and hope their children understand one day? The morning of her graduation felt heavier than I expected. I woke early, long before the sun, because part of me still believed I should be there. Habit made me lay out the clothes I always wore for her milestones: a clean shirt, pressed slacks, the same jacket I wore to her high school ceremony when she hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I placed everything on the bed and stared at it, wondering if showing up, even after she told me not to, would make things worse. My hands moved slowly as I folded the shirt again, then unfolded it, unable to decide what the right thing was anymore. I kept remembering her earlier graduations. In elementary school, she'd run across the gym floor to show me her certificate, proud and beaming. In high school, she gave a speech about gratitude and family, looking at me while she spoke. Those memories came back like quiet echoes, each one reminding me of a little girl who once held my hand without fear of being judged for it. The contrast between those moments and her call days earlier made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't ready for. Even so, I put on the shirt, tied my shoes, and picked up my keys. I walked to the door and stood there, fingers resting on the knob. I imagined her seeing me in the crowd and looking away. I imagined her boyfriend's family wondering why I came after she asked me not to. That thought stopped me. My hand dropped, and the keys slipped into my pocket. I sat down on the edge of the couch and let the minutes pass until the hour of her ceremony began. For those 2 hours, the house felt painfully quiet. I didn't turn on the TV or the radio. I just sat there, holding the program the university mailed weeks earlier, tracing her major with my thumb. I wanted to be proud without feeling the sharp edge of being pushed out, but the loneliness made every attempt at comfort fall flat. Time moved slowly, each minute stretching into the next as I pictured her walking across the stage while I stayed behind. When my phone buzzed, I looked at the screen and hesitated before opening it. It wasn't her. It was a photo someone had posted online, her in her cap and gown, standing between her boyfriend and his parents. The caption read, "She did it all on her own." Those words cut deeper than the photo itself. I scrolled through the comments, each one praising her strength and independence. Not one mention of the nights I worked late or the loan I took out. Not one hint that she had any help at all. Another picture showed her smiling proudly as she held a small card from her boyfriend's mother. The caption said, "Thank you for supporting me." I stared at it until the screen dimmed, feeling a quiet collapse inside me. She didn't just forget me. She replaced me. And I have to ask you, after seeing that, would you tell your child the truth? I thought the morning would hurt the most, but I was wrong. The real blow came later, when the celebration began. I wasn't invited, of course, but the entire thing unfolded online, as if the world wanted me to see how easily I could be erased. The first video appeared on my feed because someone tagged the university. My thumb hovered over it for a moment before I pressed play. I should have looked away. I should have protected myself. But a father's hope is a stubborn thing, even when it's bruised. She stood on a small stage at the reception hall, her cap tilted back, her smile wide. She held a microphone like she had been waiting her whole life to speak into it. "I want to thank the people who truly supported me," she said. I leaned forward, foolishly, as if she might surprise me. She didn't. She looked straight at her boyfriend and his parents. "You believed in me when no one else did," she said. "You helped me get here." The room erupted in applause. I felt the sound even through the screen, loud enough to drown out everything I once thought we shared. My jaw tightened as she continued, praising their guidance, their commitment, their sacrifices. She kept using that word, sacrifices. Each time it landed like a new cut. She didn't mention the years I held up her world quietly, without asking for recognition. She didn't even glance at the idea that someone outside that hall had carried the real weight. Then came the comments. "She's so lucky to have them. What a supportive family. They helped her every step of the way." People clapped and smiled as if they were witnessing a story of generosity and love. They weren't. They were watching a version of her life rewritten in real time, one where my part had been deleted and another family's name typed over mine. Another video surfaced, taken from a closer angle. Her boyfriend slipped an arm around her shoulder, and she leaned into him like he had lifted her across every hardship. "You pushed me to work hard," she told him, her voice soft in a way I hadn't heard toward me in years. "You taught me to believe I earned this myself." She laughed lightly as she added, "And you made sure I didn't feel like I owed anything to anyone." Those words didn't come from her. Someone had planted them, someone who didn't want her to see the truth. My chest tightened as I realized how easily a young mind, eager to fit into a world of status and pride, could be shaped by people who cared more about appearance than honesty. I watched from across town, sitting alone in my dim living room, as strangers celebrated a lie. The betrayal felt deliberate now, not just a young woman drifting away. Someone had taken the story of her life and bent it toward themselves, and she didn't even notice the damage being done. So I need to ask you, do you think she truly forgot, or was she deceived? After watching the celebration, I couldn't sit still anymore. Something inside me shifted from hurt to suspicion, and once that feeling took hold, I knew I had to follow it. I walked to my desk, the same one where I kept every bill, every receipt, every notice from her university. I had held on to those papers out of habit, not expecting I'd ever need them. Now they felt like the only proof I had left that my part in her life wasn't just something I imagined. I opened the first drawer and pulled out the folders I'd labeled by semester. Each one held confirmation emails, bank statements, and receipts stamped paid. I laid them across the table, lining them up to see the trail of every dollar I had sent. As I flipped through them, I saw the hours of extra work hidden in each line, the late-night shifts, the loan I took out under my own name, and the smaller payments I made when money was tight. None of it matched the story she told on that stage. None of it matched the pride she handed to someone else. Something bothered me when I looked at the most recent semester. The confirmation email was there, but the section listing the payer name looked different, almost like it had been updated. The account number was correct, but the name field showed third-party family assistance, not my name the way it always had. I felt a cold rush go through me. I double-checked the original bank withdrawal. My name was right there on the transaction. I printed both documents and held them side by side. One showed my payment. The other made it look like it came from someone else entirely. I logged into the university's payment portal, using the same password I had used for years. Nothing unusual at first, until I checked the supporter information section. My name had been removed. In its place was her boyfriend's mother's name, not as the payer, but as the primary supporter. I hadn't given authorization for that. I hadn't even known that field existed. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the logs and saw the change date. Just 2 weeks before graduation, I stared at the screen, reading the date again and again. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a clerical error. Someone had gone into her account and shifted the credit away from me. Someone wanted to make sure she believed her success came from them, not from the man who had quietly carried her future on his back. My hands shook as I gathered the documents into a single stack. The more I looked, the clearer the deception became. Her narrative wasn't built by her own misunderstanding. It had been shaped, intentionally, carefully, by someone who knew how to alter her path without her noticing. That kind of dishonesty wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. I realized I couldn't let this go, not for my own pride, but because the truth mattered. And if someone was willing to lie this boldly, what else were they hiding? So tell me, would you confront your child, or the person who lied to them? I didn't rush to confront her. I needed a clear head, not the storm sitting in my chest. When I finally dialed her number, I kept my voice steady, even though everything inside me was trembling. She answered with a clipped, "Hello?" No warmth, no curiosity, just distance. I told her I needed to see her in person. She hesitated, but agreed to meet at a small cafe near her apartment. I arrived early and sat by the window, watching cars pass like they had somewhere better to be than witnessing a father prepare for his daughter's truth. When she walked in, she didn't smile. She didn't even look around for me with the ease she once had. She gave a stiff nod and sat down. I took a slow breath and placed the stack of records on the table. "These," I said quietly, "are the documents for all your tuition payments, every semester, every bill." She frowned, her eyes narrowing as if I had spoken in another language. I slid the top page toward her. "The bank statement from the most recent semester." "I paid this," I said. "All of it." Her jaw tightened. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Not confusion, not gratitude. Defensive, like she had already decided what I was trying to do. I told her about the account changes, the altered supporter information, the way my name had been removed. She looked away, chewing on her lip, and for a moment I thought she might break through the wall between us. Instead, she shook her head. "That has nothing to do with me," she said. "I didn't ask you to handle my tuition, and I didn't need you to." Her words stung, but what hurt more was how rehearsed they sounded. I could hear someone else's tone in her voice, her boyfriend's pride, his need to control the narrative around her. "I wasn't trying to control anything," I said. "I was trying to help, quietly, so you could focus on school." She snapped her gaze back to me. "Well, maybe that was the problem. You made decisions without me. You made it look like I couldn't stand on my own." The accusation landed like a blow. It wasn't just untrue. It twisted every sacrifice into something shameful. When I asked her why someone else's family was suddenly getting credit for everything, she stiffened. "They supported me emotionally," she said, her voice raising. "They believed in me." I nodded slowly. "And I didn't?" She didn't answer. Instead, she crossed her arms and stared at the table. The silence stretched until the truth settled between us. Someone had fed her a version of events that made her pride easier to hold than gratitude. I realized then that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a fracture, deep, painful, and likely permanent. I looked at her and saw a grown woman who no longer recognized the man who raised her, and she didn't seem interested in trying. Before I left, I asked quietly, "Do you think you owe me an apology or something more?" She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I thought the confrontation at the cafe would be the lowest point, but I was wrong. The true breaking point came a week later, when she spoke about me in front of others. I wasn't there in person, but someone sent me the recording. In it, she laughed, an uneasy, brittle laugh, and said she wished people would stop assuming my dad had anything to do with my degree. She added that I liked to act involved, as if I were pretending. Her friends chuckled along. Even her boyfriend smirked beside her. Hearing my own child speak of me that way felt like the final tear in something already worn thin. I listened to the clip more times than I should have. Each replay stripped away the last pieces of hope I had, that this was confusion or miscommunication. It was deliberate now. She wasn't just distant. She was willing to erase me publicly. And that was the moment I made my decision. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because truth matters, and allowing a lie to grow only traps people inside it. I didn't go online to expose her. I didn't shout or argue. I took the proof, every receipt, every bank statement, every confirmation email, and requested a meeting with the university financial office. When I explained the situation, they listened carefully. They confirmed the account alterations, the unauthorized changes, and the fact that my payments were the only ones ever recorded. One administrator shook her head with quiet disbelief. "This is serious," she said. "This shouldn't have happened." Her tone wasn't emotional. It was professional, but it carried the weight of validation I hadn't felt in a long time. Word spread faster than I expected. A few people from her department reached out to her first, asking why she had misled them. A faculty member who had written her a recommendation confronted her directly after seeing the documents. Even her boyfriend's family began stepping back, unsure how to defend the rewritten story they once proudly echoed. Her friends stopped reposting her self-made speeches. People who had cheered for her started asking questions she couldn't answer. She called me only once during that time, not to apologize, not to understand. She asked why I made everything public. I told her I hadn't. I simply presented the proof to the institution responsible for her records. The rest unfolded because truth doesn't stay hidden when people finally look at it. She went quiet after that, and the silence between us stretched into something cold and unfamiliar. Even as the truth settled into the community around her, I didn't feel triumph. There was no joy in watching her face the consequences. I only felt a heavy sadness, like closing a door I once prayed would stay open. Vindication is a strange thing. It soothes the mind, but weighs down the heart. Still, justice has its own gravity. Lies fall apart under it, and truth rises whether anyone is ready or not. So I ask you, what would justice look like in your eyes? In the weeks after everything came to light, the house felt quieter than usual. Not empty. Quiet. There's a difference. Empty is what you feel when something is missing. Quiet is what you feel when something has finally settled. I spent mornings sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, thinking about the years I spent working late, saving every extra dollar, and hoping she'd never feel the weight of the world the way I once did. I didn't regret those choices. Sacrifice never feels wasted when it comes from love. But I finally understood that love doesn't always return in the way we hope. I thought about her graduation often, not the ceremony itself, but the meaning behind it. I had wanted to stand in the back row, unnoticed, and watch her take that step forward, not for recognition, but for closure. Instead, I watched from afar as she built a story that erased me. That hurt. But hurt is only one part of the truth. The other part is acceptance, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that recognizes what can't be changed. I knew she might never apologize, not because she was incapable of remorse, but because pride can shape a person in ways they don't see. She had grown into someone who listened to voices that made her feel powerful, even if those voices used her, guided her, or pushed her toward false independence. I can't force her to see the cost of that. I can only accept the woman she has chosen to become. So I set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I stopped checking her social pages, stopped waiting for her name to appear on my phone, stopped hoping for a moment that might never come. I told myself that silence from her was better than another wound. And in that decision, I found a strange, steady peace. I reclaimed parts of myself I had neglected while carrying her dreams. I began to invest time back into my own life, my own needs, my own small comforts. That doesn't mean I stopped caring. A parent never stops caring. It just means I stopped allowing her choices to define my worth. I stopped letting her rejection shape the story of my life. The truth is simple. I did what I could, and I did it with honesty. No one can take that away from me. Not with altered accounts, not with public speeches, not with silence. When I look back on her graduation now, I see it for what it really was. A moment she can't undo, not because of the degree, but because of the truth behind it. She walked across that stage on a foundation I built, whether she acknowledges it or not. And I've learned to carry that knowledge quietly, without bitterness. So I leave you with this question, one I've asked myself more than once. Would you forgive a child who celebrated the day you paid for without you?